right, Andy. I thought we'd take a look at the internet weather for this week, and big surprises, but we'll take a closer look at a few ports in particular that I thought were interesting. So in terms of the most probe ports, a lot of the characters we see frequently, Telnet is way up at the top. We see that because a lot of IoT devices or smaller embedded devices still run Telnet. So there's a lot of brute force password guessing activity going on for those. ICMP is probably just some noise. The 6379 is Redis, which is like a memory cache database. We're going to take a closer look at that one as well. You've got SSH, you've got a web port. 81 TCP is another alternate web port we see a lot. 443 is HTTPS. The 123 UDP is a little interesting. I didn't bring a chart up for it, but we see this used a lot in this is the network time protocol service, and it's used frequently as a reflection vector, similar to DNS reflection. You can get a lot of amplification with NTP as well, so we've seen a lot of that. And then 2375 and 2376 TCP, those are related. Those are part of Docker. So we're going to take a closer look at that. And then at the bottom here, another one that's been kind of hovering here strangely for probably several months now is Protocol 47, which is GRE, which is it's a generic routing encapsulation protocol. It's for mostly like point-to-point tunnel protocols. And we'll take a look at what's going on there, although I don't have any definitive answers. We still need a little more time to understand what's going on with that one. In terms of most sources probing, we have a lot of similar characters that we see all the time as well. The Microsoft file sharing port here, SMB, is up at 445 TCP. We see that a lot. Telnet at 23 TCP again. A couple of web ports, 80 and 8080. Microsoft SQL Server, 1433 TCP. 5555 TCP is Android Debug Bridge, which we've talked about on the show quite frequently over the past couple of years. We see a lot of attacks against that as well. I don't have a specific chart on it, though. SSH and HTTPS, and then again Redis in terms of the number of sources probing is also pretty high, so we're going to take a closer look. So let's jump into the more interesting specific charts here. So GRE, we've been kind of seeing this since probably the middle of the year roughly, this increase in scanning activity that I don't really have a good explanation for yet. But we're seeing large number of scan sips, probably around the 4,000, upwards of 7,000 scan sources per hour. And this waveform, or this shape, I guess I should say, is very typical of a botnet-related type of initiated scanning, where some botnet operator has told maybe his 4,000 bots to all of a sudden start scanning for Protocol 47 for various endpoints across the internet. The reason you kind of get this sawtooth waveform is the ones that have really quick access to the internet, they finish their workload quicker than the ones that have slower ones. So you'll see kind of this tail as the slower ones that have like less bandwidth and take longer for them to scan, however many address blocks they need. They kind of tail off like this. And then the botnet operator will issue another request again. And then you kind of get this tail off and you keep getting this sawtooth waveform as a result of that. As, he triggers them to all start scanning. And again, they kind of tail off as they're going along here.
Just a quick question. I want to ping your expertise here, John. We've got this sawtooth pattern. Is this indicative of a single botnet possibly doing this? Because I would imagine if it was multiple botnets, you would see kind of intersecting teeth, so to speak. So what's your opinion on that?
I do suspect it probably is one or maybe two, just only because I see these kind of weird spikes in here in between, one of these ones here. But it feels to me like it probably is one. And I think if we just kind of collect up, I just haven't had a chance to do this yet, collect up a list of these scan sources, figure out who they are. I did a quick spot check at one point of these scan sources. A lot of them are network DVRs, so those like security cam DVRs. But again, that was just me kind of like spot checking like a handful of the source IPs to see what they might be, and then looking them up in Shodan. But I think if we took a closer look at this, we probably could figure out if there's some central command and control asking them to do this and get some understanding, because I'm not even sure why. Like, what's the point of looking for Protocol 47? I'm not sure what the motivation is. I'm not aware of any vulnerabilities there. I don't think that it can be used for any type of like DDoS reflection type vector. Maybe you know something about, like, you could learn something about GRE tunnels on other ends, like if you get a response, but I'm not really sure. So this needs a little more study still to figure out like why this is happening. But something's definitely afoot, and be good to understand like what the motivation is behind this activity. Also, a lot of the sources I also noticed are in the U.S., so that's another interesting indication. But I probably should take a closer look. Are they, like residential IP address space, which I'm going to guess probably because they're network DVRs, or are they commercial, or are they, data center hosted IPs in the US, or what? So it'd be good to understand that breakdown as well, which might, indicate what type of botnet it might be, assuming it is a botnet. So the next port that I was on our chart, it was both in the number of scanned probes. It was really high, actually. I think it was like number 3 or 4 on that first chart we were looking at in terms of sheer volume of the number of scan probes occurring. But it was also on the number of scan sources chart. The number of scan sources, I feel like, is a little bit better kind of chart to look at. So I brought that one up. There is a weird blank spot in here. I'm not quite sure if that's a missing data issue on our side. I am showing a 2-year chart, and I don't remember what was going on back in the October 2020 timeframe. But it could be that, maybe it was gone for a period of time, but I suspect that's not the case. I suspect this might be a small data gap in our stuff. In any event, the takeaway for me here is that the number of scan sources scanning 6379 TCP Redis, which I think I mentioned earlier. Redis it's a like a cached memory database, very fast little database. Shouldn't say little, but it's used for like fast access to data. And we've seen bad actors targeting Redis as well as a lot of other data storage type software like this, in terms of maybe they could get some data breach data. So like some people might keep like customer records or authentication information in a Redis database for quick, fast lookup, that their web front end might go call to in order to get that information. But if they'd expose it to the internet and they have it weakly protected, somebody could get in there, take all the data, and now they got a big data breach. I'm just theorizing like why they're doing this, the bad guys. Right. But there is a definite uptick in the number of scan sources involved here. So, at the, 2 years ago, it was probably around 200 to 300 scan sources per hour. Now we're seeing, pretty consistently 2,000 scan sources per hour. So it's, a tenfold increase at least over the past couple of years. And it's been steadily kind of increasing here. So there's a lot of interest, I should say, in this. We don't see that sawtooth waveform like we saw with the other ones necessarily, but it could be that whatever botnet is behind this, or whoever's behind it with these scan sources, that they're just kind of going all the time, instead of being instructed to scan this particular port and then stop or whatever. So it could be something that they're always looking for. I do have a little, in our honeypot, we collect some of these probe attempts, and I did capture one of these. So this Redis protocol is kind of interesting. It's this Redis serialization protocol that lists on this port, and it has kind of this really weird protocol where I think it sends *2 to tell you how many arguments you're going to receive, and then how long the first argument is like 4 characters with a $4, and then the argument, and then the next one, $6, blah, blah, blah. And then the server will respond with information. So if we look at what we actually see, and this is an older one, because I wasn't able to quickly get one of a recent probe that we had. But you'll see here's an example of some of the scanning that we had seen in recent history, where they will come in, they say, I got one argument to send. That first argument is 4 characters long, and it's the command info. And if I was a Redis server, I would respond back with some system information about my server. There's some other ones here where they send 3 arguments to it. The first one says set, the next one is back 1, and then the next one, the third argument, is 63 characters long, which looks very conspicuously like a cron tab entry. Yep. So it looks like they're shoving some sort of cron tab entry into the server saying, go download this file and then go pipe it into SH, which is just your shell, which would execute it. So I did actually grab this at the time, and this is older again, but we see similar exploitation even currently. And this is the SkidMap crypto miner Trojan. So, if this Redis server accepted this request, it would add this cron tab entry, and this action here every 20 minutes would try to rerun and deploy this, run this executable here, which would deploy this crypto miner Trojan to it. So just a kind of example of what to go look for in your network enterprise in case you're looking for these types of probes. The 2375 and 2376 ports are used by Docker, and Docker is kind of a containerization architecture that you can run in terms of instead of installing an entire VM, you can use Docker to have kind of these small containers that you can update easily. And I know a lot of people use Docker. It's especially popular, especially in cloud computing spaces like Azure and the Amazon Web Services type stuff. So we've seen, we kind of have this noise floor, for the most of the year, and then around, I guess, the middle of the year, we started to see a decent uptick where it went from maybe 20,000 scan flows per hour up to 150,000 scan flows per hour. I didn't do this one by scan tips because I think it might have shown more so on the number of scan flows. So there might be a limited number of bad actors looking for this. Not a large number of sources, but the few sources there are doing a lot of scanning. And we've seen a pretty sustained upturn in this type of scanning activity. And I do have an example of this as well, what this would look like in your enterprise. You saw it. So this is 2375, I believe, is the HTTP port, and 2376 is the HTTPS one. So, on most Docker service engines. So I was only able to grab the HTTP because I'm not listening on port 2376, accepting HTTPS. We could modify it to do that. I just didn't bother yet. In any event, you'll see here's an example where they're coming in. They're trying to get the version, very similar to the other one where it wanted to get info first to find out, like, what are you? What kind of Redis server are you? This one's asking, well, give me some information about this Docker service running here. The other thing I kind of highlighted is that they're using zgrab. And zgrab is kind of like an add-on type scanner, part of the ZMAP family. So if you're familiar with ZMAP, which is a very high-speed, robust internet scanner, port scanner, can scan, the entire internet in a very small period of time, as opposed to trying to do it with Nmap. ZMAP does it by kind of opening. Well, I'm not going to get into the details. You can go read about ZMAP. In any event, it's a very super fast port scanner. zgrab is very similar, but a little bit more robust in that it will actually interact with the service, and it's kind of intelligent, so it can parse certain protocols and the responses in order to get like some information about the TLS handshake that occurred, or some of these other protocols here. There's some other things we see here where some other scanners will come and just try to do a ping. And then I think this is actually them asking, like, what containers do you have installed in your Docker, or what can you tell me about them? And if the Docker service is willing, it will tell you, and that might further lead the attacker towards what they want what they might go to do next in terms of exploiting that Docker container or the Docker service. So important one to look out for. I know a lot of people in their architectures are containerizing things a lot, especially with Docker, Kubernetes, some of these other technologies. So we know that bad actors are looking for that. And sometimes these new technologies, not that they're inherently insecure, but sometimes application developers, and those types of people who are deploying them might not be fully up to speed with best practices for securing them. Yeah. So I think that might be why we see some of these types of technologies get targeted more, more so lately, especially because they're becoming more popular.